tactics he's using.
So you really start to make a name for yourself by identifying very visible authorities or experts or leaders, and calling them out on something that you felt strongly against. You would see something that just didn't jive with you, right. And so you would be visible about that and vocal about that. Really, I mean, that's polarization, right? That kind of at its best. And polarization in the marketing world is very powerful. I mean, right? You push away some people, but you attract others. Talk to us a little bit more about maybe one example. I know in your book you talk about Gary Vaynerchuk and you calling him out on kind of his hustle mindset and mentality. If you want to lead with that one, or if there's maybe even a better example, but just so that people can really see like what are the steps that you took, and just at a high level view, like summarize, here's what I saw first, then here's what I did, and here was the result. Can you kind of walk us through one of those examples?
Yeah, I can talk about what I did, or I can talk about what a business did that was almost more sophisticated than what I did. What would be sort of more useful, do you think?
No, let's start with yours first, because I think that more, maybe as you call it, a more basic example would just be a good jumping off point for people to understand the concept. Because for so many, the idea of conflict and polarization is one they shy away from, right? You want to play safe. You don't want to ruffle any feathers, but you're saying the exact opposite. So let's kind of begin there and see where it takes us.
So Gary Vaynerchuk is a great example. So I don't know how familiar your audience would be with Gary Vaynerchuk, because he's one of those people that, as I always say, in some audiences, he's Elvis, and then in other spaces, he's nothing. Nobody knows what he is. He's a true micro celebrity. And in my world, he's certainly a big deal. So he's in some ways the preeminent sort of social media, personal branding, internet guru. And I have nothing but respect for him in a lot of ways. It's nothing personal. I think he's a great businessman. You know, he had this business called Wine Library TV. He took his father's wine distribution business, which I think did about $3 million a year in revenue, which is a good starting place, but he turned it into a massive, massive company. And the way he did that was he created this internet TV show called Wine Library TV. And he presented wine in this very down-to-earth kind of bro-y sort of way, because that's his persona. So he would come unshaven in a hoodie and sort of describe wine to like Cinnamon Toast Crunch and, you know, Fruit Loops, and curse a lot. And that was unheard of. And it built this big following, and he did really, really well with that. So because that was so successful, people wanted to know how he marketed things so well on the internet. So he sort of built this career that he's known for now as being this guru around promoting yourself online. And his whole shtick is hustle. So he's had to ramp this down a little lately because the world has changed. But when I wrote this article, he would get up on stage and he would say, using a curse word, which I won't use because this is a family program, but he would say, I get up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. with my phone, and I'm on the toilet, and I go to the bathroom, but he didn't say go to the bathroom, and I'm tweeting while I'm going to the bathroom, because that's how hard you have to work on the internet, you know, on social media to be successful. And if you're not doing that, basically, it's cool that you want a cubicle job, but that's all you'll get. And I would listen to this, and I would think to myself, you know, something about this doesn't sit right, because it's one thing if you're marketing the wine or selling the wine, but what if you're making the wine? What if you own a vineyard? Should you be spending all your time tweeting about the vineyard, or should you be trying to make a better wine? Also, it's a terrible way to live. And also, the only one who seemed to be getting rich was Gary. I mean, he has all these fans, and most of them are young men. And I don't know any Elon Musks coming out of the rank of Vaynerchuk fans, right? I mean, so it seemed like the person getting rich was Gary. And so I started to do some research on cults. And one thing that almost all religious cults have in common is that they get their followers to work very, very, very hard for salvation. But what it really does is it bonds the cult leader to the followers, because there's a sunk cost dynamic happening, where if you've worked really, really hard on behalf of a movement, and then you start to have doubts about that movement, it's really tough to have internal sort of continuity in your head and say, well, I just wasted my time for 3 years for this thing. So you double down. So I took him to task for that. Now I had an ulterior motive. I was the way I did copywriting. I would sell packages of my writing after a while, and I would write a lot of material very quickly. And then sometimes I would give the team the templates, the client the templates for doing it after I left, which was a higher price point. So Magento, I did this for. I did a bunch of case studies for them, which was the basis of their early marketing campaign when they got serious, when they really brought in a head of product. And I built their template for producing case studies to drive leads. So I was all about systemization.
And so when you say you took Gary to task, tell us more, like, so specifically, like, what did you do?
Right. So that the ulterior motive was I wanted to show that a systemized approach was better than a brute force approach. So I wrote an article in Inc., which I happened to write for the time, that said why Gary Vaynerchuk is flat out wrong. And if you read the article, it's still out there. I am nothing but complimentary. I talk about how he was a great business person, et cetera, et cetera. But then I say exactly what I just said to you. I said the idea of working around the clock is not sustainable. It benefits Gary more than the people listening, et cetera. So I didn't think anything of it. I mean, I wasn't that far along in my career yet. I was a little bit scared to send it. But, the bands I played in were punk bands. So I always had that punk rock attitude of like, let's do this, even though it's scary, offend people a little bit. That night, Gary himself made a video talking about me by name. And he went off for like 30 minutes talking about this article. And he started off very respectful. And by the end, he was obviously very, very, very agitated because no one ever calls this guy out, or didn't then. So then my phone started blowing up. All of his fans started like lambasting me. They were calling me lazy, which was very funny because I've never worked so hard in my life as I was during this time. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm an idiot. I'm destined to be poor forever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just thought that was it. I woke up the next morning and there were 50 new Twitter followers, and then 100, and then 300. So it turned out there were all of these people out there who were hearing this message that it didn't resonate with them. It does resonate with a lot of people, and they were the ones who called me out. But now there was someone who stepped forward and said, I'm against this way of looking at the world. So now they have a leader. Now they can define themselves against the hustle mentality in a very organized way. And I started to build a following. People started to read my articles a lot more. I started to get client calls. So I started writing more articles like that. And it was very, very successful for me and very profitable.
So Michael, I'll jump in because I